this is a ballet that every ballet company should have in its repertory. It is a ballet that across the board stretches the company because of the level of physicality that it displays. It really pushes the boundaries in terms of technique. And I saw an opportunity there because the company didn't have it in its repertory. The company has all the other traditional ballets that you know, like the Swan Lake, Nutcracker, Sleeping Beauty, but didn't have a Don Quixote. Predominantly, the Birmingham Royal Ballet is a touring company, and it has to be able at all costs to downscale or upscale. It depends the scenarios that we perform. And so we did it with that in mind, so that we could easily bring this magic to a place like Southampton, but at the same time to Sadler's Wells, or even the Royal Opera House if we ever choose to take this production there. I wanted the company's level to rise, and Don Quixote is the right ballet for it. It is a story that it appears in book 2 of the novel, and it's the story of the lovers Kitri and Basilio. Kitri is the daughter of Lorenzo. Lorenzo runs an inn, and Lorenzo much rather have Kitri marry the wealthiest man in town, which is Gamache, instead of a penniless barber that is Basilio. And so the whole play unfolds around them, and how ultimately the Don Quixote helped their cause and convinced Lorenzo forcefully to let them marry, and then everything culminated in a wedding. The libretto has been established already since the 19th century, when Marius Petipa, the great architect of ballet, composed it, and this is the libretto that everybody follows. I brought in, really great, stunning creatives. Tim Hadley, who produces the scenery and costumes design. Peter Mumford, who did astonishing lighting as a complement, who brought all this lighting with textures on the floor and all of that. And then Nina Dunn, which produced the animation. She was the one in charge of the projections, and sometimes it's not just the projection that you see at the backdrop, but also on the floor as a shadow as well as being projected. And the result is a ballet that is old, but it looks new.
Well, I think always you need to approach things in your own way. So I always do research, and I look at what's gone before, other productions, read around the story. Not just other productions of Don Quixote, but you look at references in Spain, look at, for costumes, I look very closely at what matadors actually wore. So I look into the research of historically what it would have been. And this is a period production, we're not setting it in modern times. So once I look at that, then I try and sort of make it our own, and not just copy, but try and make it theatrical, make it work for dance, which is a big thing, because obviously costume-wise everyone has to move, and move brilliantly. So that's the priority, that dancers are comfortable, that they can do what they need to do, and then we try and give it that other edge of making it look good. The job is, as a production designer, is pretty much designing everything you see. So my job is to design this, not only the stage set, but it's also the costumes and the props. So, and then work closely with the video designer and the lighting designer so that we're all on the same page, creating the visual world. It's always great to be asked to work on a new production, and with Carlos, it's great. I've collaborated with him a couple of times before, so this is my third project together. It's unique in that there's quite a lot of design, there's quite a lot of set, so that for a touring company, we're actually taking quite a big, ambitious production out on the road. For a company of the size of Birmingham Royal Ballet, it's pushing the limit in terms of the amount of design that we have.
So the difficulty with ballet is that really the script is described through dance, and often that process only evolves through rehearsals, by which point it's probably a little bit late to be starting the video design process. So we have to have some principles in place ahead of that. But then what's really useful is receiving videos from the rehearsal room, keeping in touch with the team as they're making the ballet, and as ideas evolve, the director Carlos Acosta and I were discussing the evolutions within the animation based on some of the work that he was doing in the studio. Tim Hatley had already set out a sort of design principle, and so I looked at that and I looked at the kind of techniques that were being used and applied my principles to that and then evolved them beyond that. So within Don Quixote there was a language of shadow puppetry combined with a painterly technique, which we used for the whole of Act 2 when we were dealing with the windmill and the subsequent storm and the monster that evolves out of that.
Dance generally is about the body, and when you're lighting dance, the first thought is how to illustrate the choreographic shapes that the body is making, because that is the language. However, in Quixote there are these comic sections which require something much closer to drama, that you need to be able to see the faces. You need to be able to, because they're acting, they're miming, and it's not something that can only be expressed by some wonderful backlight or some sharp sidelight or whatever. That doesn't do it. You have to. So there are moments when you have a traditional approach to lighting dance to something which is much closer to drama. The visual language of Quixote is based on naturalism, based on very simple storytelling, but within it is required to have moments that I would describe as expressionist, where it goes away from natural. In a way, some of that is connected with the mind of Quixote himself, who lives in a dream world, which gives the opportunity to break from naturalism into something much more expressionist. The only reality is the reality that's in his head, not in anybody else's.
Cutting for ballet, you have to think about how the body articulates and moves. Traditional matadors' costumes are incredibly elaborate, and a lot of extra embroideries and detailing. It costs an absolute fortune, and they're far too rigid for classical dancers to move in. We had to consider how we were going to approach it. I have worked with the designer Tim Hatley far too often in the past and know him really well, and he's a good friend. Well, he had come up with the concept of doing digital printing, and we kind of are running with that as a concept.
So this has been digitally printed onto a silk jersey, and it's a particularly characteristic print. So whereas there was originally one vintage dress, now you can have any number of them. So on the big shows that get cloned, you've got to clone the fabrics too. So you need to be in the business of being able to endlessly, here's another one, endlessly reproduce the same thing.
He's done an awful lot of work sorting out the artwork from traditional matador outfits, and he's taken that and put it in the computer. He's tinkered with it. He's taken patterns that I did and he's manipulated those. He's removed some of the decoration after we had a talk about how that I could then embellish the digital printing to try and lift it, because digital printing is beautiful because it's a photograph and you can look at it and you go wow, but the problem is it doesn't have any 3 dimension. So what I want to do is I want to try and lift it up so your eye is confused and tricked into thinking it is a lot more 3-dimensional than it really is.
How do you know you've done your job well? What is the emotion that you feel inside?
The only time I know I've done it well is when Carlos has told me it's okay. That's the when he's fine, I'm fine. You know, it's a great piece. It gives audiences a lot of joy. I think the music is fantastic and the choreography is wonderful.
When you talk about creating a ballet, you talk about the vision first. It's like, what do you want? What do you want to do in this particularly ballet, Don Quixote, which is a very old ballet, from which lens you're going to deliver it. To me, if a ballet doesn't exist in the repertory, there is no point to bring it as it was. I wanted to bring something to the table that is new in terms of music, in terms of design. What elements can we bring that speak about who we are today?